I'm Fawn Annan, CEO of ITWC and producer of Technicity. This year, I'm honored to have Josie Scioli, Deputy City Manager, Corporate Services at the City of Toronto, join me in welcoming you to Technicity GTA. Josie's strategic leadership touches many aspects of supporting and enabling the city's agencies and corporations through oversight of corporate real estate management, customer experience, environment and climate, fleet services, and technology services divisions.
Thank you, Fawn, for having me open this year's event with you. Technicity celebrates the power of information, technology, and transforming public service and the citizen experience while increasing economic growth. This year's lineup will spotlight Toronto, Mississauga, Hamilton, Brampton, Barrie, Innisfil, Newmarket, Ajax, Scugog, and Durham Region. Wow, what an incredible group.
Today, we have an exciting assembly of speakers tackling some of our most pressing issues. Let me turn it over to Josie, driving change at the City of Toronto, giving you a taste of what you're going to hear.
Thank you again, Fawn. This year's theme is Doing It Together. For me, it is about driving more value for corporate services using a center-led approaches to leverage policies, standards, processes, metrics, and a matrix teams to improve operational effectiveness and accountability. Technicity GTA will highlight the incredible work occurring throughout the GTA. Today's event will touch upon many challenges, recognizing industry as cities partners, reinforcing it, doing it together. We will explore public service delivery as we continue our digital transformation and digital leadership journeys to meet new citizen expectations. For Toronto, city priorities include the current climate regarding digital space and the digital divide, balancing fiscal constraints, our continuous focus on citizen modernization, improving and innovate the customer experience at the city, emphasis on technology innovation. We need the right tools available internally and externally, and a continued investment through an ecosystem, which we all actually would appreciate and like. All of these priorities are tackled with the goal of improving equity for Torontonians. Now, with over the two years under our belt with COVID environment, much has changed alongside citizens' expectations. As we hear, municipal governments throughout the region have responded admirably, incredible. They use technology to innovate ways that they respond to citizens' desires and consider that their staff's collaborative needs as we are in a hybrid work environment. Partnerships have made it very possible, so thank you.
This conference would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. You'll meet them as they participate in the program, and we thank Epson, Google, VMware, Ricoh, and Shiny Docs. Please check out their downloadable articles and white papers on the platform. I also want to highlight the event's chair, MISA Canada Executive Director Catherine Balco, and her colleagues at MISA. Without their efforts, this event would not be possible. We're grateful for the support also from the CIO Association of Canada, the Digital Governance Council, KIPS, and the Mackenzie Institute. Before we get started, I want to point out some of the features of our Technicity TV platform, including those that maximize opportunities for interaction. I'm presenting to you live from what we affectionately call the Jumbotron. Immediately to the right or below on some devices, you'll find the chat box. If you have a question that you'd like to see posed to a presenter or panelist, put it in the chat box. Why don't you test it by telling us where you're from? If you hear something you want to share on social media, the hashtag for the event is #Technicity. And now, please welcome Connie McCutcheon, President of MISA Canada, to say a few words.
Hello, and welcome to Technicity GTA 2023. I'm Connie McCutcheon, the National MISA Canada President and a long-term board member of MISA Ontario. Technicity GTA is a great opportunity to partner with IT World Canada to showcase successes from some of our MISA Ontario chapter's municipal IT leaders. MISA Canada values our partnerships with industry partners and chapter members from across the country. We're looking forward to learning how they are meeting cybersecurity priorities on a limited budget and how they're delivering exceptional end-to-end customer experiences to citizens. These are common discussions in municipalities across the country, and MISA Canada looks forward to having in-depth discussions on matters challenging municipal IT leaders at our annual National Executive Summit in the Old City of Montreal this June. So now, I invite you to enjoy Technicity GTA 2023.
Thank you, Connie. And now for our opening keynote from Google, please welcome John Cousins. John is the Managing Director of Public Sector Canada, Google Cloud. He is a cloud industry veteran with experience in 2 cloud computing startups and has over 20 years of senior management experience with previous technology leaders. John has a passion for innovation, customers, and hockey, all powered by an entrepreneurial heart. He is an executive in residence with CATA and sits on the CATA National Advisory Leadership Council. A native of the Ottawa Valley, John is married to an amazing wife with 2 children that inspire him daily.
Good morning, and welcome to this year's Technicity event. I'm John Cousins, Managing Director, Public Sector, Google Cloud Canada. I'm often asked, how does Google look at innovation and approach innovation? So today, I wanted to talk about 10x thinking for the public sector as you enter into this event. So firstly, what is the innovation that we've driven over the years? If you think about it, Google has over 8 platforms with 1 billion users each. What does that mean? It really means that we've had to take an approach of 10x thinking that it's all about coming up with radical solutions to huge problems and solutions that provide a 10x improvement over the way things are currently done. So what are the foundational elements that Google has and uses to produce such 10x thinking and produce such success in platform adoption? Really, it starts with a culture of innovation principles that we share. There's 6 primary principles, and I think the number one most important principle for public sector or people in the public service overall is psychological safety. We also follow that by focus on the user, 10x thinking, launch and iterate, default to open, and innovation comes from everywhere. So really, I'm going to drill in on psychological safety. What does that mean? Psychological safety is a condition in which humans feel included, safe to learn, and safe to contribute to the challenge to status quo. Often in government, which has a hierarchical structure, challenges people to be able to express or do that in that hierarchy. It's not necessarily conducive to that psychological safety. Whether you have to sit in front of a committee and defend something, it's adversarial in nature versus open and transparent. So how do you have that psychological safety where people are free to test things out and push different boundaries? That is a number one predictor of team success at Google. And I believe in public sector, we could adopt some more of these principles to ensure that we can drive this kind of success when we're looking at digital transformation across the board. Number 2 is really focus on the user. You saw those platforms that we put out in the world widely adopted. It's because it's user-centric, keeping them in the loop. It allows us to, focus on the user and everything else will follow. So that's a key principle. The next one is really default to open, transparency, sunlight, share everything model. So transparent on sharing objectives, progress reports. At Google, we have something called Google Geist. We share and we publish everything internally. TGIF meetings, we share product vision internally. We open source everything. And then we create space for people to collaborate constantly and interact. Those things are really about openness and which help drive that culture of innovation. And frankly, innovation comes from everywhere. Too often in government, especially in technology, we find ourselves saying, I'm this type of a shop. In the digital era, I would argue that you can no longer say, I only use this tech, because innovation is coming at us faster than ever before, and innovation comes from everywhere. So we try to inspire innovation by having people and employees look at 20% projects, stuff that they could do on the side to pursue outside of their core jobs. We create something called Area 21, which is an internal incubator with the support of Google's infrastructure. And Google X and Google Ventures, which are separate for innovation structures and external investments, vehicles, and for Google startups. These are foundational elements which allow us to have a broader purview of where things might come from in the future to enable digital transformation. Sharing everything, I talked about this earlier. We share everything internally at Google. There's very little hierarchy and very much transparency that people and employees are empowered. Taking this kind of principle means that no one's questioning agendas, no one is questioning where the strategy is. It's in the open and all the time. And finally, have a healthy disregard for the impossible. What does that mean? Ultimately, don't necessarily be bound by the status quo. But why Google at the end of the day? 3 key things come to mind when I talk to public sector executives across the country. We bring together open source and data, open multi-cloud services, open doors to experts. So what does that look like on the ground for Google? Really, one of the things that we're doing in cities right now is Waze data in Google Cloud for actionable insight. By joining Waze for Cities programs, eligible partners get access to raw Waze data, such as traffic jams, alerts, or irregularities, provided as BigQuery datasets. This is provided by free, and you could build applications off this. What does this look like? In practice, this helps us build environmental insights, for instance, looking at transportation emissions, rooftop solar potential, building emissions, technology having impact with that type of insight into the data. We could use Google Data Maps to provide rich insights into the vital signs of our planet. What it also looks like is using other technologies that we have that's available to the general public, Google Earth and BigQuery datasets, with weather, satellite imagery, and other geospatial data information for environment and urban analysis. We're seeing increased weather events. City of Toronto was seeing floods. Who would have thought? How do we have a better understanding and insight into the data that can impact our environment and our the environmental impact that it has on our cities? We've seen organizations in Canada like Natural Resources Canada, where they're monitoring Canada's leaf canopy with Google Earth Engine on Google Cloud, looking at how the 50 years of data to be able to understand where that leaf canopy is this day and age. This is all key open data that we provide and engage with. And finally, things like Waymo. We're empowering autonomous smart mobility providers with data. The Waymo open data set contains data collected from millions of kilometers of cars that have driven over urban environments. Think about this for the future of how we're looking at innovation. These are just a couple of things that, as you think about this session the next day or two, and what we're looking at with Technicity and for cities, I wanted to share these thoughts, and I'll let you go. Thank you very much for your time.
Please join us for the first of the 4 panels at this year's Technicity. We're going to start off with meeting the cybersecurity challenge. Then we'll explore in panel 2, city modernization, followed by end-to-end customer experience, and ending with why we're spending so much time on all these critical areas. Our final panel is city building. As we know, smart city technologies promote an effective way to counter and manage uncertainty and urban risks through the effective and efficient delivery of services. Yet, paradoxically, they create new vulnerabilities and threats, such as making city infrastructure and services insecure, brittle, and open to extended forms of criminal activity. Deloitte states there are 3 factors influencing the potential cyber risk in smart city ecosystems, from the convergence of cyber and physical worlds to the integration of disparate city services while enabling improved infrastructure spells vulnerability. This session will discuss how to manage the cyber risk landscape. Our moderator today is Richard Freeman, Certified Information Professional, ECM Portfolio Manager, Enterprise Workflow Solutions, RICO Canada. Our panelists are Brent Kapp, IT Security and Risk Officer, Town of Newmarket, Kush Sharma, Director, Municipal Modernization and Partnerships, MISA, Ontario, and Roland Chan, CISO, Toronto Metropolitan University, and finally Manish Agnihotri, Interim CISO, City of Toronto. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you very much. You know, the good, the bad, and the ugly are evolving at an extraordinary pace. And we hear about what we should be doing to ensure security modernization. But what can we do now in the short term is the real question. And we want to investigate this deeply and understand what we can do operationally and infrastructure-wise to protect our employees, our constituents, brand, and especially when we have such limited resources and budgets. I'll begin with the premise that if information exists, it's accessible. Secondly, most executives believe that beyond their people, their information is an organization's most valued asset. So a question that I have here is, how do you valorize the information that you have? And I'd like to start with you, Manish.
Thanks, Richard. Well, I think most organizations, what they have to do is they have to, with limited budget, form a priority. And that prioritization begins with collaboration with the city clerk's office, with business owners and data custodians that can help identify data based on classification. And based on how that's classified, then you look at the security, the infrastructure, and everything around that that's supporting the safekeeping of that data. So the first step really is to have that discussion and identify what is the key data to the organization, and where is it being housed, and how do we secure that?
Thank you very much. Brent, do you have anything to add?
Yes. I think one of our strongest assets we have in our organization is our people. If you talk to the right people in our organization, they'll be able to tell you how much the information we're securing is worth. They may not be able to quantify the exact dollar value for the information related to the assets, but they can help us get to the answer. It's critical that the information security team spend more time with our business leaders to understand the questions such as, how long would it take to recreate all of our engineering drawings? Or more simple questions such as, how much lost productivity would we have if the ERP system was unavailable for a week? Using this information, we can start to tell a story about how critical an asset is and what it's worth from a service delivery perspective.
Great. Thank you very much. Now, at the end of 2022, there was a lot of talk around cyber insurance. In fact, the Zurich CEO, Mario Greco, said that cyber attacks will become uninsurable. And earlier last year, Lloyd's of London came out and said that they were not going to be able to handle insurance for organizations that were attacked by states. So if the cyber attack came from China or from some other country, that it probably would not be insurable. And we're seeing this rise in cybersecurity going from $3 trillion in 2015, according to the World Economic Forum, to $10.5 trillion by 2025. So what measures have you taken about cyber insurance, and do you see this changing soon? And Roland, I'd like you to address that, please.
Yeah, certainly we see a lot of changes in terms of the cyber insurance industry. So for our organization, we kind of taking this advantage to really make every department aware of the importance of cybersecurity practices. Right? So as the insurance carrier, they raise the bar in terms of what they're asking for, and that become a platform for us to really work with different growth business unit and really pay attention of improving on your cybersecurity practices, like those controls, and become a platform to make sure that everyone follow the policy, the direction and practices to become more mature over time.
Kush, do you have any comments on this? Because we see this changing, this dynamic of cybersecurity.
Yeah, I think when we look at insurance and municipalities specifically, we see that many municipalities going forward will not qualify for cyber insurance based on the heightened controls that insurance companies are asking for. In addition to that, even if they do qualify, there are many new caveats like the act of war, which has kind of been expanded. There are several private sector cases that certain companies have received insurance and then are taking their insurance companies to court because they're not paying out. And defining it as the act of war where it's a ransomware group, right? So they're associating those
ransomware groups to a state actor. And this is kind of where the gray area is. So what we see in terms of a trend outside of some of the larger municipalities, I think, they'll have to look inward to creating kind of self-insurance, grouping together and creating those specific, unique, let's say, apparatuses where they can come together as a municipality and self-fund themselves.
And Manish, are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I think similar. I mean, I think what organizations have to understand is that insurance is really not a control. It's not a cyber control. It's part of your remediation. It's part of the recovery. So what this is driving now is how best can we improve and mature our security posture.
Excellent. Now, we talked about the fact that we believe that information is a huge value to us, yet we also find that 80% of that information is held in things like unstructured documents in various systems, much of it containerized in things like Microsoft 365 or PDF documents. And this unstructured content is either the primary information source or the part of a broader collection of information that invariably many in the organization may access, and much of which is duplicated in multiple areas of the organization. So with that, and I'd like to go back to you, Brent, with regards to your people, and how do you assess the risk related to the information within your organization?
So regularly interacting with our business leaders and the operational teams will help us not only understand what the organization's most critical assets are, but where they reside, which is critical. This changes over time, so it's important that we continue to revisit the discussion. Once we have a clear understanding of where our critical assets are, we can focus on assessing the risk more comprehensively with tools like vulnerability assessments, compliance assessments, controls audits, and just cybersecurity industry data from reputable sources.
I'm just wondering if we could expand on this, Kush, to talk about how you achieve that balance with your people and your information.
It's a difficult challenge to look at or remediate. I think looking at those critical assets, in our survey that we did at MISA Ontario, our constituents mentioned that 92% of them feel that they should focus on critical infrastructure, so water systems, transportation, solid waste, elections, etc., as opposed to traditional IT. And so if we take that guidance that we receive from our membership, we could try to strike a balance there. Because what you don't want is the water system to be breached, right? If Microsoft Office 365 and your documents go down, and maybe you can't process some financial statements, that can be fixed or dealt with manually. But if your water system goes down, there's life safety issues to that. So if we can try to balance the resources that we have as municipalities and focus on the critical infrastructure components, i.e. the systems and the data sitting in those systems first, I think that would be a good start.
Thank you for that. Roland, you're in a little bit of a different environment and you've got a very broad constituency right in the institution. So how do you achieve that balance?
Yeah, I think we achieve the balance by doing the threat risk security, threat risk assessment process. So what the threat risk assessment giving us is a very quick scan through to identify the initiative, whether or not the proposed solution justified to collect all those information they want to collect, and give a clarification in terms of the criticality of what they processing. And based on that information, you can drive a balance in terms of how much security you should build along with it, or maybe have a streamlined process to acquire those systems on board. So that's how we try to balance. And on top of that, we also work closely with the privacy office to make sure that all those information collected are deemed to be necessary.
Thank you for that. So Manish, of the information stored within your organization, how do you know where all the personally identifiable information may be held and by whom?
Right, and that's a fairly big task, which requires a lot of collaboration between us and your data custodian or the city clerk's office, and really the information owners and the business owners. But I think a key way to mitigate that risk is constant cyber awareness training for your staff. It's hard to control that, but if we give our people and our resources the right cyber awareness and the right tools on how to safeguard it, I think that puts all of us in a better position.
Brett, I'd like to build on that actually, because when looking at cybersecurity and where the low-hanging fruit is to protect your organization and mitigate as much risk as possible, understanding the information you have and where it is a fundamental first step. And how are you informed on information assets and where those assets may include sensitive information in your organization?
Key theme that I'm always looking at is spending some more time working directly with the employees from all areas of the organization, right from the senior leadership team all the way to the frontline workers group. Also, working with the IT business systems analysts and the clerks department, also the records management teams will help you to better understand the lesser known locations of where the PII is stored. These people are experts in collaborating with different units of the organization, and they know where all of the data is kept officially and unofficially. So not just where it's supposed to be stored, but all the temporary or the alternate locations. So sometimes you'll find people storing PII somewhere just because it's convenient and helps them get from point A to point B faster. So the more that we understand the use cases for these temporary or alternate locations, easier it is to work with the business units to improve on the security posture.
So we all agree that starting with knowing what information is stored within the organization is really important, and protecting personally identifiable information and payment card industry, things like credit cards, et cetera, help to mitigate a large percentage of potential risk. But we're seeing that the governance over this is getting more and more broad, and we're seeing this more because the GDPR, for example, in Europe was put in effect in 2018, and their fines have gone from 1.3 billion in 2021 to 1.581 billion last year. And we see the new California Privacy Rights Act coming on board. We see Canada now with Bill C-11, also known as the Digital Charter Implementation Act of 2020, or some call it CCPA. And this is going to change even PIPEDA. There's going to be changes to PIPEDA affecting it. So Canadians are going to be exposed to a new level of protection legislation for privacy. So as we prepare for that, and I'm going to turn to you first, Roland, is what is your baseline for compliance? Do you look to the GDPR or the CPRA, or do you rely solely on local or national regulations such as PIPEDA? And why have you taken this approach?
Well, I think first of all, it's about the regulation in terms of what are required to comply. First and foremost is the PCI industry. I think that is the regulation like all business need to comply with. Without compliancy, there's some financial implication to organization. So we adopt a program, and fortunately, we were able to pretty well help all those business units to work with third-party service provider in the point that the organization will not hold any credit card information on site. Regardless how you do things, including financial accounting or anyone, no one will touch the credit card number. So by that program, we worked a couple of years, we successfully to outsource those services from a third-party payment provider who are certified to do those kind of work. So I think we handle that very rigidly every year and through the PCI audit, and we comply on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. And Kush, do you have a follow-on with that? Because with these small municipalities, what kind of guidance can we give them for a baseline for compliance?
So from a cyber perspective, I mean, generally it's NIST, and that is what kind of the majority of municipalities, the provincial Ontario governments are using, private sector across the board. From a privacy perspective, it's PIPEDA, obviously, in Canada. So, we have to look at those specific requirements. We'll see in the upcoming years, there is the refresh to the privacy legislation in Canada coming. There's a new tabled legislation for cybersecurity in Canada. That'll probably take a couple of years to weave through the system. But the general recommendation is to look at NIST from a cyber perspective. And there's many controls in NIST. So you really have to focus, I would say, if you're a smaller municipality, on the top 10 controls and work through them one by one. If you can do shared services and combine the effort in terms of putting in those controls remediation with, your county or other municipalities, that is definitely the trend that we are seeing.
That's economies of scale. Welcome. Manish, as we modernize Well, that really means we're implementing new things as well. And migrating to a new system requires a review of the data to be migrated and a risk analysis of the information to be migrated. How do you prepare for migration from one system to another? And do you interrogate the information for business or cultural value? And a follow-on question to that is, how do you avoid the lift and shift approach to migration?
Well, I think with that migration, I'm going to maybe step back a bit. There is a discovery/design phase. And what you have to make sure you do is, where is that endpoint you want to get to? The whole point of modernization is to hit those pain points that you had with legacy systems, whether it be excessive access or lack of transparency or not enough controls in place. You want to make sure those are put into your design, so you're not just taking what you had before and shifting it into another tool, but dealing with the same problems after the fact. So what you want to do is improve and get to the point where you're managing risk and being transparent and basing access when we get to the application layer on least privilege.
Brent, I'd like to go to you and say, how do you work through these issues, and how do you have some guidance for our audience on best practices with this?
I think having a lot of patience and the right people dedicated to following all the proper processes and procedures is critical. Every single IT implementation or project is different. And if you stick to the core foundations of all your processes and procedures, it makes things a lot easier. If new issues arrive, they need to be dealt with as soon as possible. It's usually easier to handle the issues when you're in the middle of a project rather than, in the middle of implementation.
So as a final question, what tips can you share for improving employee collaboration around security? And I'd like to start with you, Roland.
So I think the collaboration coming is to educating with the end user about what it means by you transforming the system either to the cloud or to the SaaS, and what role, what new function you've been taking on yourself by doing such, and what legal contract we should be in place to make sure that what the trust we have in our vendor are really holding water at the end of the day. So those are things, the discussion, meeting, understanding, and collaboration to make it work.
Excellent. And Kush, last word goes to you. What tips can you share for improving employee collaboration and security?
Yeah, so stop thinking about yourself as a technical function and, we're clicking buttons and doing configuration all day long. Now, that is part of our role, but is not the only part of our role. And we need to translate and communicate better to the leadership that we are a business function. It is a critical business function within the organization, right? We're doing all the modernization, digitization. We're securing all the new, cloud applications, for example, or anything that's coming in. And that's critical for the services that are going to the citizens to be valuable, so that they don't get hacked, that they meet the requirements of those users, and they can be accessible by those users. And that is the focus that that we should consider going forward as municipalities, right? Specifically the IT and cybersecurity functions.
Excellent. So I really want to thank you all for your time today. And this was a wonderful discussion. And I'm sure people are going to take a lot away from this in a positive vein, and look forward to greater modernization within our municipal governments and within our institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now, please join us for a fireside chat with Nicole Cooper, Director, Legislative and Information Services Clerk, Town of Ajax, and our own Jim Love, CIO, ITWC.
Two things that struck me when Nicole and I first talked about this presentation. First, the idea that data analytics can be valuable to organizations of any size. And second was her desire to share what her town had developed, particularly with other municipalities that might not think they can do this. My guest is Nicole Cooper, the Director of Legislative and Information Service from the Town of Ajax. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, the Town of Ajax, you corrected me on that. The Town of Ajax is bigger than the city that I was born in, but it's still a modest-sized municipality there. Mm-hmm. Now, you did a strategic plan, and then your team started to put together some ways to make data visible and visual based on that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're currently in about year 4 of a 5-year strategic plan, and as we get towards the end of it, we're definitely starting to focus more on projects that surround data and how we're using it to run our business better.
Now, you did some initial work with open data, and I think when we were talking, you said you didn't get the traction you hoped you would get from that.
Well, sort of. Open data was very trendy, something all municipalities were getting into probably around 8 or 10 years ago. And so we certainly got on board. We launched an open data site, and it's actually fairly well utilized. I didn't mean to suggest otherwise, but my concern is that it's only really usable by a certain segment of the population. We tend to see users of open data being, journalists, academics who are somehow skilled in harnessing that data in ways that they can derive meaning from. But it's not super accessible to just your average person who's trying to find information about their community.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing with open data. The people who know how to use it have got it, but then what do you do with the rest of the people? And so you did something cool. You started some projects on your own using Power BI and I think Esri, which is a great Canadian mapping software. But this isn't a story about the tools. This is about what you've been able to accomplish with the tools, even though a relatively small municipality. And these are the same tools that almost any municipality could acquire or may have already.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's why I wanted to highlight some of these projects today, because they're not particularly earth-shattering. They're just simple interactive applications. We've just kind of found some creative ways to serve up data in a way that's useful for people. But I think these are just small projects that are high value, but they're accessible to municipalities of any size. They're scalable. Anybody with a modest amount of GIS or data talent can do something just like this and find it useful.
Great. So tell me about some of the projects.
Just to kind of cue it up, I think municipalities often don't realize just how rich our business is in useful data, and especially geospatial data. So we're starting to sort of turn our minds to data as a key corporate asset, and we're looking for creative ways to take these big data sets, make them easily accessible, and use them to provide insights into our business. So I'll show you a couple examples of that, some inward facing, some outward facing. Just looking at how we can display large amounts of data, pulling data in from multiple sources, and then, as I said, serving them up in a way that can reveal patterns for people, help users to gain insights, visualize options, and just sort of better derive meaning from data in a way that we can't when it's in a tabular or some sort of unstructured format. So the first one I'll show and talk about is just a simple mapping application. This is an inward-facing one that we made for our fire department. So the purpose is really just allowing our fire department and the people that work in it to visualize fire-related incidents and incident patterns over the years. So we're bringing in data from a number of different applications, geocoding it along with important attributes like cause, alarm counts, and then sort of adding in additional data sets to enhance the map. So information on our outreach locations for our fire prevention program, basement apartment locations. And these things all taken together and served up in something visual, it's really useful for our fire department in, for example, improving planning, preparedness, response, risk reduction, looking at where we should target our outreach initiatives to get the most bang for our bucks. So that's the first one. So the next one I was going to highlight, again, super simple. This is just an interactive mapping application that's highlighting the locations of the various capital projects that we're proposing for within our 2023 budget. It is budget season right now, so this is very topical. So what this does is residents are able to actually visually identify projects that are taking place in their neighborhoods using this easy to use application. It's interactive. Our projects are symbolized by category. So if you're interested in roads or parks or what have you, you can filter the results by those options. Maybe you're just interested in what's happening in the geographic area immediately where you live, your own neighborhood. So that's sort of the beauty of the interactive element. This one really shows, I think, the evolution from the way that we used to present this type of information in a big budget document, a PDF, just pages and pages. You'd have to sift through to find something that was actually relevant to you. Now you can filter it all in a way that's meaningful to you.
Fabulous. Yeah.
So the third example, this is the one that I'm most excited about. I'm actually a municipal clerk by trade, so this one is really close to my heart. So if you think about a municipality, a clerk's department, we've got, hundreds of years of unstructured data on council and committee decisions. And it lives in these formats that are not useful to us. So agendas, minutes, reports. And what we've done in Ajax is we've taken all that information and placed it into a database format and then displayed it in this Power BI dashboard. So we've captured basically every available data point in relation to each and every council decision. So what meeting it was approved at, what ward it's relevant to, who the mover and seconder was the recommendation amended, was there a recorded vote, blah, 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 endless. But it's displayed in this interactive dashboard using Power BI. And the result of that is this really, really powerful accountability tool that can be used by, for example, the CAO, or council even, to sort of like track progress on all council assigned deliverables, distribute workloads, catching dropped balls, measuring organizational performance, all these things. That's just a sort of an example from the clerk side of things. It's not geospatial, but it's information that existed in this completely useless format that's now usable in a much more sophisticated way.
Now, have you shown this to council yet?
Not yet.
Are you? Because I can't wait to see their reaction on this. This is fabulous. I've been to my own municipal council meetings. They're pretty dry. There's a lot of stuff, and it's really hard to keep track of things. And this picture is like, this is exactly what they need.
All of these projects evolved from a business need, a problem we need to solve, right? And in this case, the CAO had a problem that he needed to solve. Balls were being dropped. He couldn't remember where they were. He didn't have a complete picture of what is everything that council has assigned us? What are we behind on? What have we accomplished? And so that's really what this tool was built for, as a management tool for the CAO. But the possibilities are endless. Eventually, it will be more sort of tailored for council's purpose and for their audience.
That's the wisdom of doing analytics. Find a problem, however simple, that somebody needs solved, and solve it. Good for you. So what challenges did you have when you were rolling these out?
I think one of the big challenges is that a lot of the data that we want to use, that we want to harness, isn't in a data format yet. So the example I just gave about the council decision dashboard, all of that information, super, super valuable, but it was in this like unstructured, unusable format. If you wanted to find something, you're sifting through PDFs and Microsoft Word documents from, 20, 30 years ago. So the initial challenge is at times like transferring these large data sets into a database format so that we can actually display them, manipulate them, filter them.
Good stuff. Now, was there an aha moment when you showed this to someone and you went, wow, we really nailed this one?
Maybe not a single one, but I think organizationally, these little mini projects that we're doing have really got departments thinking about, okay, what data do I have? How can I harness it? How can I show it to the public? How can I tell a story with it? So I like to think there's a lot of these sort of aha moments happening across the organization, and we're sort of just at the beginning of doing more with data.
Great. And what have you learned from doing this?
The power of data, really. And I guess another thing is like the value of people who are good at this stuff. We've really started growing our GIS and data team this year. And like talent in that area just pays dividends. It's such an important area to invest in right now.
Yeah, I know. When we first talked about this and I said, this is a great accomplishment, you were really careful to say, this is a team. So building a team that can get behind this must be a real part of the secret. It
is, yeah. And you know what? It's becoming tougher. Like recruitment and retention in IT, especially in data and data science is really tough right now, especially for municipalities, because we can't pay the big bucks like the private sector can. But if you can find talent in this area and find a way to keep it, then you're golden.
Yeah. So what do you want to do next?
Oh, I think we're just at the beginning here. I mean, the possibilities are endless. We're just getting into Power BI, but holy moly, is that a powerful tool. So I talked a little bit about sort of the roadmap for the council decision dashboard. Right now, it's just a tool that we're using internally, but talk about like the possibilities for, putting something out into the public where the public service is actually held accountable for delivering on the things that are assigned to us. So that's kind of the trajectory of that tool, but we're not quite there yet.
Well, great. So a great citizen experience, keeping track of things that are difficult, informing people. You've solved a lot of problems with this. I can see other municipalities saying, I really want to try this. How could a smaller municipality get started?
What I love about these projects is they're attainable by municipalities of any size. These tools, I mean, Esri tools, Power BI, not super expensive. The skill set needed to build these things is not super intense. We can find this talent, but I think like where the starting point for municipalities and for people in this sector is what we just talked about, Jim, is like, what is the business problem I need to solve? That's always the starting point. So in the example of the decision dashboard, we have business areas that are dropping balls. How can we identify where they are? And from that develops the idea and the tool. And so I think that's kind of always the starting point.
Great. Nicole, thank you. And on behalf of a lot of municipalities are going to pick this up and probably some might bug you with questions. Thank you from them as well. This has been great.
Yes, thank you very much. Take care.
Now, a little change of pace. I'm going to invite my colleague and friend, Adam Hughes from the city of Brampton. Hi, Adam.
Hey, Jim. How you doing?
Good to see you. So you came back to Brampton in October from Saskatoon. This is still relatively early, but what's it like coming back to the old stomping grounds?
Feels like a very comfortable pair of jeans, to be honest with you. I'm very happy to be back. As you know, I've had previous stints in the Peel region as Peel Region's IT director and also chief information officer at the Peel District School Board. And it's just something about that area that just keeps dragging me back. So I'm back for my third stint and absolutely thrilled and excited to be here at the city of Brampton.
Well, we're glad to have you back. So what I want to talk to you about today is the role of the CIO and how that role has evolved. And second, I also want to talk to you about collaboration and the type of collaboration necessary to get results with partners for our citizens. So I'm going to start with the role of the CIO. And you and I know we look young. We've been around a few minutes. The CIO has had different roles and it changed over the years. There's the manager kept things running. There's the translator between business and IT. And increasingly, there's this role for a collaborator and a partner. So can you tell me how you've put that together in your mind?
Well, Jim, hopefully this doesn't signify how old I am, but I've certainly seen a significant shift in the role. As I know but probably not everybody who's watching this event knows, I've been at this role at the CIO level in municipal space, public sector space for over 15 years now. And I would say that the role has really significantly shifted. It has really moved to be a strategic enabler for organizations. It's moved away from sort of a client service, the business sort of relationship to one of being a strategic differentiator. For those of your viewers who sort of are in the Toronto area, I would say IT is like city TV. We're everywhere. I mean, we really are. And I would say that I probably in 2023 probably spend more time talking about what I don't do than what I do in IT. And to be honest with you, and this is probably going to sound a little, hopefully not controversial, but I think that one of the best things to ever happen to the role of CIO and to the IT function in general was actually COVID-19. Really demonstrated the importance of IT as a function, as the CIO as a key executive in organizations, and so it's been very it's been interesting for me to sort of see that evolution of the role, and quite frankly, I'm excited about it. We're not just a bunch of wire heads or propeller heads. There is a lot that IT can bring to the table, and I think the rest of sort of the corporate world is starting to see that. In terms of your second question about collaboration and results, I have found, again, perhaps a little reflectively here, that regardless of whether you think you know what needs to be done and the most important thing for the organization, that without collaboration, without organizational change management, quite frankly, without buy-in, it's just not going to happen. So really being able to quickly assess what needs to be done in an organization, to develop a vision, get people excited about it, to get them to see that it's the way to go, even if it's not going to your ideal state. And building those collaborative bridges are absolutely essential to success in my experience.
Yeah, I don't think you're the first to say that the role of the CIO did change during COVID, and I think this collaboration is part of it, a different perception. The question that that everybody's asking is how we capitalize on that change.
One of the things that, if I were to be a bit reflective here in my career, unlike I think many other functions within an organization, IT has had a tendency to disassociate itself with the quote unquote business of the organization. And so I think how I would say it's really, there's an opportunity to capitalize on this is that an actual recognition that IT is key and they don't need to earn their way to the big chair. And I'll give you an example. So when I recently came from the city of Saskatoon, fantastic, shout out to Saskatoon. Awesome people there, awesome organization. But when we did the big pivot to move to remote, there was really an acknowledgement of the importance of IT. Now, of course, in a municipality, not every single employee has the ability to be able to work remotely. But in Saskatoon's case, it was about a third. And we pivoted within a week. A third of the organization was effectively working remotely. And we got a lot of kudos back in terms of business continuity, the ability to continue operations. So again, I really feel like nobody, I don't think any of us could have realistically predicted a global pandemic. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we've seen Netflix shows threatening it, but to really, go through what we went through, I really feel like IT really stepped up and I think can be used as a bit of a launching pad for a recalibration of how IT organizations work within organizations.
Yeah, a real partnership in there. And speaking of the partnership and the collaboration, you and I have talked about this in the past. There's a myth that governments have trouble collaborating and sharing systems. We've got at least one presentation we're going to go through today where we're going to show how that works. But you've had a lot of experience with collaboration. Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, one of the things, and I will be honest, I don't have a private sector comparator here, so I might make some assumptions, but you're right. I think government certainly gets a little bit of a rap in some ways. We don't always have the tools that one would think would be available in the private sector. As I'm fond of saying, we have to navigate through a very constraint-filled environment, which is very different than most, I would imagine, private sector organizations. So I think what I have seen if we focus on municipalities, so this is now the fourth municipality I've worked at in my career. We're not really in competition with each other. So there are opportunities to share. It's a little bit of, scratch your back, scratch my back. We'll figure things out. And it does tend to work that way. So lots of examples that I can bring up where I've collaborated with different municipalities. Even when I was at the school board, different school boards, even when I was at the Children's Aid Society. Different organizations. So I think there's just it's almost like an innate desire to want to share, I guess, in the secret hopes that maybe they'll share something back that'll be useful.
Yeah, I guess sometimes you got to give to get, I guess, is the issue. But if you had a tip for somebody who was really wanted to become a more collaborative partner and share with other groups, what would it be?
So if I were to take the first time that I was at the CIO role, which is 2008, and where I am today. I might look the same, other than the scruffy stuff on my face, but the biggest difference would be that I kind of thought like I knew what needed to be done back then and tried to get people to shift. Whereas now I feel like I just need to kind of really take the time to ascertain where we're at and then how to sort of nudge. I call it tugboating. I don't know why they call them a tugboat, because you don't grab somebody and yank them. It's just a little nudge, a little nudge, a little nudge. But some progress is better than no progress, and I think that's the biggest difference for me. It's really about, are we moving forward? Yeah, sure. Maybe we're not going at the speed that we want to go, but at least we're making some progress. For me, it's always been in my public sector career about impact and legacy. It's not about chasing shareholder value. And I can tell you that every place that I've been at is better off today than they were before I got there.
Thank you very much, Adam. It's so great to see you again. And I think the city of Brampton's looking forward to having you there, and we are as well. My guest today has been Adam Hughes. He's the CIO of the city of Brampton. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim, Nicole, and Adam. On to our second panel, city modernization. City modernization and urbanization result primarily from technological advances. The importance of improving technical infrastructure, with municipalities owning or managing 60% of city infrastructure, helps to attract higher human capital needed to support systems for future development. There is a growing belief to push for bold and sometimes radical yet sustainable solutions to meet future city requirements. Citizens and businesses are demanding such results. This session explores current and future activities for planning, maintaining, and growing great cities. Our moderator for this panel is David Storr, Enterprise Account Executive, Public Sector, Google Cloud Canada. Joining David, we have Grant Cowan, Manager of IT, Town of Innisfil, Cyrus Tarani, City of Hamilton, Chief Digital Officer and Director of Innovation, Marco Palermo, City of Toronto, Deputy CTO of Technology Standardization Delivery.
There's a growing belief to push for bold and sometimes radical yet sustainable solutions to meet future city requirements. Citizens and businesses alike are demanding such results. This session explores current and future activities for planning, maintaining, and growing great cities. So in this light, I'm asking the panelists, what are the biggest problems you see facing, your technology planning today when looking at maintaining and growing great cities? Maybe Marco, I'll hand it over to you to start.
The major problem, of course, is just the size and complexity and bringing businesses along from the business process perspective, right? And traditionally, I think most of my co-panelists can probably attest to the old school way of delivering initiatives, which still is very valid, but that waterfall way where you spend a lot of time up front putting together requirements documents and so forth. Whereas I think the way we're trying to overcome that challenge is moving more to that agile methodology. When you think about what the pandemic has done, it's given us that opportunity to deliver increments of a solution, certainly a holistic, but deliver those increments and keep enhancing it. And so that's certainly something that the city has done. And when you think about when we went to when there was lockdowns and so on, the city was able to transform and bring a lot of those services that you used to have to come to a counter for. In some cases, we had one location in the city as large as Toronto where you could get permits and licensing, and we brought that online. And so I think it's, that big problem that we're facing is just the sheer size of these applications and solutions that have to be implemented, and how to deliver those in a really effective way while ensuring that customer experience is the number one priority, so that the ease of use for our residents is considered throughout the process.
It makes sense. And a lot of it does come back down to that customer experience and how do you make it easy and seamless for them to do it. And especially when it get into that it's intuitive. Otherwise, you'll find that they won't go for it and you don't actually get anywhere. You end up putting it in, but it's not used. So yeah, I agree with that. Customer experience is really an important component.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd add is that there's complexity, especially for cities with legacy applications that are help run our operations. It's often really complex to look at how to modernize those legacy applications, or we've grown up with different solutions for different divisions, kind of in a siloed fashion, and now are looking to what is that enterprise solution that can help bring those efficiencies. And I think the other thing that you always have to keep in mind with cities is we serve a very diverse group of customers. So it's not necessarily about a shift to digital, though that's important for options. It's ensuring the channels, whether it be in person, via phone, or maybe someone opts to use a digital channel, that service experience from a customer journey is consistent.
You're talking about, bringing more digital services online, getting a seamless experience, from physical, from your counters to that digital. It sometimes opens up, and we've been talking about this for a number of years about the digital divide, and wondering, given the mandate of municipalities and cities, maybe you could describe a little bit about your current and future approaches to addressing the digital divide.
Yeah, I can speak to some of the work that's been happening here in Hamilton. We've been doing some basic stuff around providing, for example, public Wi-Fi to parks and spaces like our bus terminal to make sure that those are part of the digital divide, may have means to get connectivity. But that too is complex, right? If you think about digital divide, it's, do you have connectivity? And oftentimes, can you get affordable connectivity, especially if we're talking about those that are marginalized within our community? Then do you have access to a device? And then do you have the skills to use that? And if you're missing any of those three, then, you can have them, but if you don't know how to use them or interact with them, you're still part of that digital divide. So I think for cities, it's about, where can they offer services? Is there collaborations with community partners on delivering skills, whether it be libraries that are delivering digital skill training, or it could be device donation programs, public Wi-Fi efforts, digital literacy efforts. In Hamilton, we've launched a digital equity grant that's part of a grant program. It's a 2-year pilot that's specifically focused at community partners, bringing forward funding applications to deliver programs that will help support the digital divide within our community.
Exactly as Cyrus has outlined, you want to ensure that your services are offered and available to everybody. And so I think we do a number of things. Last year, I know we did some great work as it related to passing what was our digital infrastructure strategic framework, which provides a lot of base principles for ensuring equity and diversity within any technology solution implementation. One thing, and an area that certainly I'm extremely passionate about, is ensuring digital accessibility through every solution we bring, and not only for our residents, but it's also for our staff, ensuring that the solutions that we implement are accessible to everybody. The other thing too is looking at all the ways we can make a platform available across different devices. So whether it's a mobile responsive app or using the app itself is extremely important. Because again, depending on whether you're using cellular or using a city location to come in and use a desktop there to receive services, and then offering that services in as many ways as possible.
Yeah, I could echo in the case of Innisfil, a lot of things being the same as that Marco and Cyrus are mentioning. And one of the things that we noticed, especially with the early days of the pandemic, when everybody switched to online schooling, that we have a mix of, Innisfil is a mix of both urban and rural areas. And in our rural areas, online schooling did not work so well. When you had 3 kids and you have the best you could get was 5 megs down. It was very challenging. And that really highlighted what some of that is. So to respond to that, we actually did have a lot of access points in some of our public areas like libraries and arenas that obviously couldn't always go into them, but we'd paste them so they'd be accessible in the parking lot so that people could come in, at least get online in some of those. Through our library and our Idea Lab, they have a lot of services there as well that kind of help address that divide through training to help residents get up to speed and learn some of those technologies, as well as even just access to technologies through their hack lab and things to go and build things and learn how to use that technology.
What do you see as the role of the municipality and of the business community within, your cities and within the tech or innovation ecosystems, R&D, whether it's universities, labs, whatnot? Where do you see those intersecting in fostering the growth of great cities?
As a city, you do have to think about your partners. So I can speak to, Hamilton. We work closely with our post-secondary institutions. We work closely with some of our anchor institutions like hospitals, and then we have things like our port, our airport, as well as our transportation and goods movement sectors. We have our regional innovation center. We also have what's called the Center for Integrated Transportation and Mobility, which is one of the Ontario Vehicle Innovation Network regional technology development sites. And when it comes to the innovation ecosystem, it's about finding those opportunities that work, that you can maybe sometimes try things either on a smaller scale pilot or and get your feet wet without maybe exposing or taking on a huge chunk of risk.
In today's tech industry, and certainly, to the point of governments and being risk adverse, but also needing to be able to scale. That interoperability between systems and platforms is extremely important because that's what allows us to build those partnerships with so many different vendors. I can tell you, we on a number of occasions have engaged with many of our different business partners and vendors and universities to advance a number of different pilots, be it sensors to measure even temperatures and even water within the trees that we planted. So those little creative ideas came out of partnerships with different municipalities. We had even with Google, through the pandemic, we quickly partnered to test some AI and the use of chatbot through leveraging their AI engine, right?
So how do you drive change in such a risk-averse environment? Both, I guess, managing up, right, within the organization, as well as when it comes to staff in driving these, innovative initiatives forward.
I can start on this, and I think one of the big ways is making those business cases to show that outline what that problem is, what are we trying to solve, and what are some of the different ways to do it, and out there and through that outlining what some of those risks are and how can you mitigate them so that they're manageable, and that can kind of help. That will help get the others that are more risk averse or have to deal with that risk.
I've been with the city for 19 years. So I'm well versed in how it operates. But I can tell you this: deliver. Just deliver. Give results and show and try to demonstrate to the leadership that sometimes you have to rip the Band-Aid off. And I think, what better time did we all have in the municipal space, certainly in IT, which I'm sure you have all three of us around the table, well, four of us, of course, just looked at that as an opportunity to finally rip that Band-Aid off and say, you know what, we need stuff urgently. We need to deliver to our residents because our doors aren't open at the moment. And so we're going to show you what we're really capable of. And that's exactly what we did at the city. And I can tell you, just within my team alone, our team, and so proud, we delivered over 140 solutions within a year and a half. And, I can't go without saying, and I think the pandemic really helped us do that. I think even the public are becoming a little more forgiving of our ability to get solutions out for them that makes their lives easier.
You talked about a lot of these successes that you've had, through the pandemic and be able to, digitize a lot of the services. What are the risks, the business risks of not modernizing?
You look at a large tier 1 municipality or even a tier 2 city, the range of services that are covered, most businesses wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, whether it's water, sewer, garbage pickup, managing golf courses, managing parks, forestry, health, public health vaccination programs. It's a massive portfolio of services. And I think to the points that were made earlier, if we can continue to show those incremental improvements, it's the expectation. It's the expectation of council. It's the expectation of our citizens. So not doing it, not to state the obvious, is not an option. But doing it in a manner that shows results is really kind of the status quo. I think that we have to be proceeding and going forward.
The real business risk of not modernizing is going out of business, is being rendered useless. And that is a scary thought. And I don't think we would ever get there. And I think the passion, certainly within our city, and I could probably easily say for Hamilton, Innisfil, and every other municipality across Canada, this great country, is that we're trying to push that envelope. And I'm often reminded when this question comes up is, you've heard about the CEO saying, "Oh, we don't have the funding. What happens if we train these people up?" And the CFO goes, "Yeah, but what if we don't train them and they stay?" Right? So that whole idea of making sure everybody's, if we keep it where we are, you're not moving forward. And in fact, if you're not investing in that move forward, you're staying stagnant and become irrelevant.
Yeah, I agree with what both Marco and Cyrus were saying. The other thing that I want to add to that is by staying still and not doing anything, you end up losing control of your data. Somebody else is going to come in and do it for you. And that comes back to Marco saying you become relevant almost. The other thing that would get in there that is the risk is through not modernizing, you're not offering the modern services. At some point in time, that's going to start affecting your economic development as well. Any businesses moving in are going to go somewhere else because they have those modern tools and services available. So it's maybe not an immediate thing, but that is something that would come down the road as well.
With all this innovation and approaches, planning, modernization, all the work that you've been doing, how will you know you're successful? How do you measure success of these modernization initiatives?
I think there's a couple of things. So I think adoption is one. So as we see, maybe if we're talking about providing parallel digital services, the adoption of those services, and maybe over time a shift to some of those channels that complement, say, in-person or phone-based channels. I also think, satisfaction. So I think a component of delivering technology modernization is also being able to measure how you're doing. So that could be through customer surveys. It could be through immediate customer service feedback. So you understand, how that's happening. And then, Marco's raised some good points, and Grant, about you need to also think about your internal processes. So things like job satisfaction, having access to the resources and feeling empowered to support technology and innovation within whatever work area you have that's applicable in the city. Retention, are we keeping staff in those technology roles? Are we able to recruit new people as we see changes or people retiring? So I think those are some of the measurements that will be used to sort of gauge the success of the work that's happening across a majority of cities and municipalities, I would think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The main thing is that adoption, and does that new tool or new process stick around, or does it die off because it's not used? And it's that main thing, and it's a short term, but it's also a long term thing. Is how well does it stay around and build on it for future improvements?
Of course, now getting analytics on any solution quickly can tell you your adoption rate, and we always want that. And we certainly want KPIs. We want to see our staff more efficient because of the tools we provided them to deliver the service. But I will tell you this: the other thing that goes a long way, and more recently we've seen it, is just those random tweets. We've seen it between new solutions that we released, all the way back to even I look at the C2, what we call our C2K program, our Concept to Keys program, where we launched and we had one large builder just outline the fact that previously we had a staff member who would have to come downtown to bring in a zip file on a USB key to hand over to staff. And we would sit there because we missed certain things. So we'd be trying to fire things back and forth while they sat in front of you. only to come back and we'd lose half a day of a staff. And when you hear that, and then know that we've now brought the whole solution digitally, that I think is there's also that can't be missed the attempt to get all these analytics and all the data that justifies it. It's also the comments, the support, the feedback that we receive from the public to say thank you.
Sometimes you get into adding technologies, but you end up adding them for the technology's sake as opposed to actually solving a problem. And if that's the case, it's not going to stick around. But when you are solving a problem and it's making either residents' lives easier or staff life easier, it has a tendency that's going to stick around, and you're going to build on it and grow it.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Really appreciate you joining this panel and being able to share, your experiences, your stories, your visions, your successes with each other and with the audience as well, and myself. So great to, get this time with you and really appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dave and panel. And now I'd like to introduce our third fireside chat. A few days ago, I sat down with Dennis Fan, Business Inkjet Enterprise Product Manager for Epson Canada. A discussion surrounding printers and multifunction devices are where the digital transformation journey sometimes begins for many organizations, connecting the paper-based and digital worlds. It's my pleasure to introduce Dennis Fan from Epson. Dennis Fan is a product manager at Epson America Inc., with over 25 years of experience helping thousands of business partners and customers with their printing needs. Specializing in business printing and solutions, over the years, his strength in engineering, marketing, and management has garnered recognition from Managed Print Services Association for winning MPS Leadership Awards. Dennis earned a master's degree in computer science and an MBA from the University of Southern California, where he was inducted into Beta Gamma Sigma, the International Business Honor Society. Well, that's a very impressive background, Dennis. We're going to chat about significant shifts when it comes to print and how that is contributing to the public service modernization agenda. In modernizing services and finding savings, Epson has a vital role to play in this agenda, and we're going to find out why right now. Hi, Dennis. Let's start with how Epson, known really for being in the desktop market, has stepped into a new category, the copier market. And what exactly does that mean?
Well, printing technology has been out there for a long time. Started with laser technology in the 1970s, 80s, and so on. Since then, it's been perfected. And now we're in 2023. The per page cost for laser has reduced by so much simply because the technology have improved quite a bit. Nevertheless, recently the inkjet technology now have take on the lion's share of the printing market for a number of reasons. Fundamentally, the inkjet technology is a lot simpler than laser technologies. In addition, there's also usability on the device development, and because the technology is simpler, and it's help contribute to sustainability quite a bit, and helps save energy consumptions and also reduce waste and so on. Most importantly, this technology has also now been implemented together with a number of security technologies, and that's the reason that inkjet technology has now taken on hold and become the dominant technologies in many spaces.
Thanks for breaking that down in regards to the critical aspects of the inkjet devices. But what I really like to understand now is how it feeds into the public service modernization agenda, Dennis.
Sure. I can explain that in three aspects of it: simplicity, security, and usability. From the simplicity standpoint, the inkjet technology has to be reliable and efficient, and it is. It also needs to be sustainable when comparing against laser devices. It is. And on the security aspect of it, technology also needs to be safe. You need to be able to guard against the personal data. The data has to be confidential, whether the data is in transmission, on storage, or even after it's deleted. You have to make sure that they are safely deleted, will not be able to be hacked and recovered. From a usability standpoint, the technology needs to be easy to use. It has to be intuitive. It has to be simple to help people to get more done with a fewer steps. And it also needs to be able to integrate the system for them so that a lot of things can be automated for the user to eliminate and minimize human intervention.
It's great. I know that Epson has reinforced its sustainability commitments in the print industry with 100 billion yen investment into sustainable innovation, which is phenomenal. How does this technology feed into the sustainability agenda specifically?
Uh, well, sustainability is in Epson's DNA. It really goes beyond just a product innovation. Like when I mentioned earlier about simplicity, the security and usability of the product, that in order to help the customers. But the Epson really have that deeply ingrained and from the get go. For example, in 1988, Epson, we were the world's first company to announce that we would eliminate ozone depleting material, the CFCs, and we became the first one in Japan in 1992 to accomplish that goal.
A big part of modernization is cloud connectivity for becoming digitized. How's Epson addressing this need?
If you look at from the end user standpoint, the office managers, the comparable receivables, often they use those machines to do their daily job. And therefore, we also have worked on to develop the solutions that work very well with our devices alongside with other industry partners and to be able to help simplify their workflows. For example, let's say you are account payables and you receive an invoice from the customers. Often you will take the invoice and go to the MFPs and to scan that document, then come back to your desk and get that scanned images and attach to the email and send it out to the next person for processing. While that's not a very difficult task, it is involve a lot of steps. So with the technologies that you will be able to simplify the workflow to have the document scanned automatically, push and send it down to the next person. So the next person will be informed and notified with an email, for example, and then it will continue on the processing. So the process to automate that step is the key to help our customer to be able to do their job with less amount of time more efficiently.
What do you believe is the future of printing technology in a digital world?
The sustainability strategy initiative related to resource preservation, energy consumption, saving, and so on, all those have helped reduce the printing demand. But like digital photography has not eliminated photo printing, the need for business printing will remain. As a professional who prints, I think the future of printing for me is that I can print anytime I want, use whatever device I have from any system I am on, and print to any devices I have access to easily, cost effectively, and securely. And I think that's the future that the printing is going to evolve around.
Thank you very much for sharing, Dennis. That was very insightful and I enjoyed it.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
I'm very excited to present our third panel on end-to-end customer experiences. The citizen experience from individual to enterprise business perspectives comes with expectations for all services a municipality offers. Rethinking serving the customer by government departments and agencies is now top of mind. The pandemic built higher reliability and dependence on the city customer citizen, radically altering expectations. Products and their designs, technology, processes, and policies need to be and are being revamped. This session will discuss the changes the new technologies allowing for radical changes, and policy thinking to place the customer first. This panel, sponsored by VMware, is moderated by Mai Nguyen, Head of Government Relations and Public Policy, VMware Canada. Joining Mai on the panel, we have Cielo Medel, CIO, City of Mississauga, Becky Jameson, Director of Corporate Services, Municipal Clerk, Township of Scugog, Karthik Venkataraman, CIO, Town of Newmarket, and Gary York, Executive Director, Customer Experience, City of Toronto.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to share your expertise. We know the pandemic has radically altered the way that municipalities have had to deliver services to their citizens. It has changed the expectations the citizens have for digital government services. At VMware, we've been hearing about these changes from our clients, so we decided to survey Canadians directly and find out what their experiences and expectations with digital government services were and are. We'll get to some of these results during our discussion, but the one I want to lead off with is that given the choice, 2/3 of Canadians would rather access government services online rather than inline. This new expectation from citizens has profound impacts on the products governments offer, how they design them, what the technology and processes used are, as well as what policies need to be in place to govern them. Are there specific stumbling blocks you have encountered trying to improve the citizen experience? Why don't I kick this off to Karthik?
So the challenges definitely are there. One of the biggest challenges is keeping up with technology and having legacy systems in place that constantly need to be updated. And as we look in the municipal sector, we find that it takes time due to resourcing or budget cycles or council initiatives. And therefore, what ends up happening is by the time you put in a new system, it's already outdated because of the pace of technology.
Is there any way for municipalities to be able to keep up with the constantly changing technology, or governments in general?
Absolutely. I think this is where, we talk about partnerships with other organizations, working across the various levels of government, ensuring that there's resourcing, whether it be staffing to assist or the technical resources to help with that, or even the funding through grants or whatnot to allow us to quickly adapt to technology and look forward and put in technologies that allow us to be scalable when the time is needed.
Thank you so much. And Cielo, what about for the City of Mississauga? Are there specific stumbling blocks that you're encountering trying to improve the citizen experience?
We all know that government teams are structured as silos for a reason, which creates issues for citizens who need to interact with separate agencies and departments to accomplish something. Silos make it difficult to build services that are interconnected. Aligning operating models and teams is challenging as we need to rearrange strategic, technical, and operational capabilities in an integrated and very well sequenced way. In the case of Mississauga, we have two levels of government. We have both the municipality and the region, of which the interaction at the residence starts with municipality, but it has to flow through the region. So that alone provides a greater depth of access for the public.
Thank you so much. So then, as we just shifted a little bit, Gary, as the City of Toronto being a single-tier municipality, are the stumbling blocks the same or different?
Somewhat similar in the sense that we are siloed. We call ourselves the city or the enterprise, but we have 44 different levels of the enterprise interactions within the city. So we're really supposed to have one brand, one Toronto at your service. And the other challenge that we find is that in those 44 different entities, everyone feels as though they own the customer and own the customer experience. So one division would feel like they own the toes, someone owns the fingers, another person owns the nose, and it gets very fragmented, and it's not a holistic picture in any way, shape, or form. And what the city has to remember and be humble is the fact that we provide services. The group that owns actually the relationship with the public, it's council and the office of the mayor. We provide services, and we have to provide consistent end-to-end services. It's one of the good things that I'm proud to say in terms of this division being created. That's one of the things to help address some of these siloed cultural nuances and really not looking at establishing standards, and accountabilities and capabilities across the organization. So if we are looking to commit to services, it has to hit certain standards. And then on top of that, our division really focuses on the effectiveness of that delivery of service, not the ROI, but the overall effectiveness. And that's something, and especially in the public sector, has been ignored for many, many years.
Becky, I would love to hear your perspective from maybe a smaller township on some of your stumbling blocks.
Awesome. Thank you. And, all of, my panelists have talked on many of the stumbling blocks we face, limited resources, budget constraints, high expectations. But one of the biggest challenges we face as a smaller municipality is that we're compared to the larger municipalities. So City of Toronto does this. Why can't you do this? We want this. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we face with delivering good customer service experience. We have a lot of people moving out our way, and we saw it really throughout the pandemic. And they came from somewhere like Toronto or Mississauga, where service delivery was a little different. They have more staff. They're able to offer different things that we're not quite able to do yet. So they're expecting that same. So we're trying to come up with creative ways to address that, but it's not apples to apples, and everybody wants to think it is apples to apples. It's not. We're much, much smaller, and we have to look at different ways to address some of those stumbling blocks.
So do you find yourself, Becky, then comparing yourself to other similar sized municipalities to make a business case?
Yes and no. I think we're starting to look outside the box and get a little more creative with respect to how we can find ways of delivering service and meeting some of those expectations. We're partnered with the region of Durham right now, delivering a CRM. So we're built within the region's CRM right now. And when it's fully built out and live, from a resident perspective, if they submit a service request that's a lower tier service request here in Scugog, to them, they won't really know whether it was Scugog's service request or the region that's dealing with it, because they'll be able to manage and track it all within one place.
Thank you for that perspective. Appreciate that. So that leads into, I guess, the next question of how much of a challenge are legacy systems to delivering a quality customer experience? Are there examples of when you've been able to successfully modernize customer-facing applications that have been residing in legacy systems? And I guess more importantly for the audience, is there advice for others facing this challenge? And Becky, I'll kick it to you to start.
Okay. Legacy systems are a huge challenge, and especially for a smaller municipality with very, very limited resources and budget. Many of our systems are outdated and, weren't kept up to date. And trying to, put processes in place to enhance the customer experience is very challenging. But as I said earlier, thinking outside the box and coming up with creative ways to try to meet the residents' expectations. So we know we can't do everything at once. So we're looking at our existing systems. What can we do to perhaps enhance them to deliver just a little bit of an experience enhancements to our citizens? Most recently, we were able to, one of the biggest things were with our building and planning applications. So we kind of piecemarked that out, and we implemented a new software, got rid of our old software that hadn't been updated in 10 years. Staff hated it. Residents, it wasn't effective, efficient for them. And we started from scratch. And we've had nothing but positive experience. And we broke it down. We've done building. We just launched bylaw. And now we're moving on to planning. And, giving that little piece to our residents to see, hey, this is coming, is really positive. We're not able to deliver it all at once, but giving it little is a win for everyone.
Great, thank you so much. Karthik, you had talked a bit about this in your previous response. What about the town of Newmarket?
So at the town of Newmarket, one of the things that we've done is we've looked at it from a realistic standpoint of how much we can achieve in a given time. With that being said, we're taking a novel approach of building an integration platform that standardizes our procurement of new technology based on a so-called town API that we can now connect any third party into, because we now have our connections to our old legacy systems, and we now give guidance to any new application that we bring in for our service delivery to work within our standards. And this has been really helpful. Many municipalities actually have integration platforms that they use either on their GIS side that they're not aware of. So We've taken advantage of those systems and built an integration platform and a data model that allows us to integrate with multiple systems. And this is, I think, as Becky stated, thinking out of the box and trying to find something that will help not only for the future, but work with the past.
That's great. Another interesting stat from our survey, and we've discussed this a little bit on the panel, is that only 50% of Canadians trust the government with their data. To what degree do you think citizen experience impacts that level of citizen trust? And what are other things that governments need to do to build trust with citizens around their digital offerings? I will kick this to Gary. We'd love to know about the City of Toronto in this instance.
Sure. What was interesting is we've undertaken an evolution in our CRM journey as well in digitizing services. So one of the biggest challenges we had before is we've digitized, we have about 600 service request types. And before there's about anywhere from 95 to 100 of them that was, available online, but the process was very convoluted. You couldn't attach pictures or anything to it. The milestone updates were very limited. So the experience wasn't something that people would like to continue and be repeating or trust in that process. So what we've done is we revamped the entire process. We've digitized all 600 services. We have moved from a multi-channel environment to an omni-channel environment. And we've really focused on, for example, the cost per transactions, because we're all in a situation where, the dollar matters. So the cost per transaction, when you look at it from a call perspective, we manage about 1.3 million calls on a yearly basis. And the managing of that call is anywhere from $11 to $16, depending on the complexity. It being, a general inquiry or something that derives a service request. Now, when you digitize that service, we move from $11 to $16 to 10 cents to $1. So the investment on the CRM is a fantastic example of us doing some really, really good work. And a good example of why that's the outcomes that come along with that. In 2019, when we did the pilot, we won the City Manager Award for customer service. And we're now up as a finalist for the City Manager Award for the full implementation that happened in November. So, crossing our fingers and wishing us luck, but I think we're in a good position.
And Sila, what about the City of Mississauga?
It's very clear that digital, as we have experienced in the last 2 years, is now the first point of interaction for government. A positive online experience and secure and user-friendly set of services are critical to enhancing overall trust. One of the top drivers for getting people to access government services online is the ease of use and confidence in the information they can get. Being transparent in the use of the residents' information is another way of gaining that confidence. The time of the pandemic was a great example of this. Access to accurate information and service became a matter of public trust. Trust included getting data on infection rates, access to vaccine information and services. So giving relevant information for people to know data about something is very important.
How are you increasing digital access and empowering frontline employees to deliver a great customer experience, perhaps again in the City of Mississauga?
We serve a diverse city, just like Toronto. And our employees are reflective of that, and they bring a value entrenched in serving and providing excellent customer service. For our Mississauga.ca channel, we have what we call the Voice of the Customer program. Through that program, we continuously collect customer experience information from the website. We identify trends and pain points. We actively design improvements. And last year, we implemented over 260 improvements to the Mississauga.ca site based on direct customer feedback.
And Becky, what about in the township? Are you finding that, or how are you empowering your frontline employees?
I think we're just listening to them. We're trying to, as I said earlier, as much as you really want to focus on the residents, it's so important that we're focusing on our staff too, who are the ones really delivering that frontline service. So we're engaging them every step of the way and getting their feedback and finding what new tools, resources they need to be successful in delivering that amazing frontline customer service that we're all striving to deliver. And, nothing's off the table. Kind of my rule is don't be afraid to bring any idea forward. It may not be possible, but we'll definitely consider it and see if we can find a way to incorporate it.
So if we're asking people to provide ultimate customer service to the residents, our staff need to feel that they're respected and appreciated as well. And just the last point around technology, one of the things that we've been able to do, yes, training is important, but also just ease of use of the tools. So a number of clicks per transaction, reduction of about 30% of just the number of complexity around creating that service request and getting it, from one end to the other. So all those elements really create a better environment for our staff, which in turn creates a better environment and an experience for our residents too.
Thank you, Gary. Karthik.
Yeah, being head of technology means that, I should be a champion for it, but it doesn't solve everything. And I think it's true. We've seen it time and time again that our frontline staff need to know how to use the technology, need to collaborate on that and share that experience. So that's one thing the town of Newmarket is very proud of, is that, we have an award-winning customer service department that actually shares its knowledge and shares the experience, not only amongst other customer service departments with our neighboring municipalities within the region, but we also have programs for all employees.
And to conclude on a fun note, I would love for each of you to share any pilots or recently launched programs that are really making a difference for citizens. Gary, why don't I start off with the City of Toronto?
Sure. I welcome anyone, if you have the time, just to Google 301 Toronto or look at our mobile app and try it out. It's actually a world-class app. It's actually won awards as well across the world in regards to the implementation. It's extremely user-friendly and intuitive. It deals with over 600 categories of service requests. You can attach pictures. If you're walking, hopefully not driving down the street and you see a pothole, you want to attach that to your service request. It's there. I simply ask you to try it out and provide some feedback, because our theme in terms of the customer experience journey within the City of Toronto is moving from good to great.
CLO, what about the City of Mississauga?
Very similar to Gary York, I would like to advertise the City of Mississauga. You can visit the mississauga.ca and you would see it has been launched for a while now, but how intuitive the use of that online service requisition and just the website on its own. You will, and if you want to visit again the recent service that we've had for our dear Hazel McCallion and stream the service, it's there. It's very seamless. It's very easy.
Becky and Karthik, any last words on this one? Any last comments?
I think for me, it's just we're really excited. We've partnered with the Region of Durham on our CRM, which started with their My Durham 311, and we've launched our first phase of our MyScugogConnected.ca, which is built within the region's main CRM, and their CRM is going live in March. So I encourage everybody to continue to follow how this partnership works out, and to check out our portal as well as the Region Citizen portal in March once it goes live. So thank you.
And from the town Newmarket, we all know that citizens' interactions begin with councils, and the council meetings for us have been very successful because we've taken on a hybrid approach where citizens are now able to put in deputations through an online service, and it's really seen uptick in interaction and engagement at a council level. So that's something we're very excited about.
I would like to take a moment to not only thank the panel for joining us today, but also for all the work they do to improve the daily lives of citizens. I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say we look forward to seeing what is next. Thank you.
Thank you, Mai and panelists. It was great. Please welcome back Jim Love for our next Fireside Chat, CRM Partnership Initiative. Jim?
I'd like to welcome my guests, Becky Jamieson, Director of Corporate Services Municipal Clerk from the Township of Scugog. Welcome, Becky.
Hi, Jim. Thank you for having me.
And Kalyan Chakravarthi is the CIO of Durham Region. Welcome, Kalyan.
Thank you, Jim.
So just to get level set with the audience, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do. So we'll start with Becky. Becky?
So as you mentioned, I'm the Director of Corporate Services and Clerk for the Township of Scugog. So I oversee all of our legislative services items here related to council and committees, our customer service, and then I also oversee information technology.
And Callion, what's a CIO do? He said the CIO asking you.
That's a very broad question. I feel like, and this is an interview question, but like I'm the chief information officer, so everything and anything related to technology and Durham region, like that's what I oversee, as well as like I'm the project lead for our new customer experience enhancement project, what we call it as My Durham 311.
Which is what we're going to talk about. Now, this project has been described to me initially as a CRM project, but it's really a public portal for 311. Callion, can you just describe what the system is and what it does?
Yeah, so we started on this journey, I think 2 years back, where our first question, what we wanted to really look at is like, how can we enhance our customer experience? And like, how can we make our regional services accessible to our residents easily, whenever they want it, however they want it. So we looked at it like from all, like serving it in all channels. So one of the channels like is definitely through phone, and like, so that is where with our 311 dialing is enabled in Durham region and people can call 311. Now like this port, like what we are talking about is a customer portal where they can raise those service requests, they can track those service requests, as well as like get information.
Now, what's unusual about this system, and why I was really interested in it, is you have two levels of government sharing the same project. Becky, how did that come about?
It really just came out through discussions. We were in a position where we were looking to do our CRM, and it happened to be that the region of Durham was going down a very similar path at the same time. It's something that I'm not sure has ever been done, at least here in Ontario, where a lower tier municipality has joined into upper tier municipalities' CRM. So, through conversations, we were very fortunate that the region of Durham was supporting us through IT for a while here in Scugog. So we already had started to develop that partnership. And then this opportunity presented itself and we decided to give it a shot.
Callion, did you go into this with some trepidation? Did you think, wow, this is something that we could have problems?
Yes, like we know the challenges that are going to be there. But I think the biggest part of this partnership was about like that trust and respect for each other. That is what helped us to really go into this partnership and think about and say, hey, let's try to make this so that like it is always thinking about our resident. It is putting that customers first rather than like thinking about like you are Scugog, we are the region, like nothing like that, but like looking at it and saying, how can we make it easy for our residents?
And Becky, how did you feel being the smaller municipality partner in this?
Not going to lie, there was a lot of stress there to begin with. A lot of people told me I was crazy. But when we weighed our pros and cons, it made the most sense for us. We have limited resources here at the township, and especially on an IT front. And we saw it as an opportunity and something that, hopefully in the futures, others will look to what the region has done and allowed us to be a part of as something that they want to strive to do in the future.
And spoiler alert, I think you guys are going to be successful, but and just between us, what were the real challenges in there? Callion?
I think the biggest challenges has been the, and like, I hate to use this word, but the compromises are like where we wanted to go in one direction, but like, as we have a partner, like where you can't go into it, like starting from branding. So where when a resident enters, where like, how does the resident differentiate between what is the regional part of it, like, and what is the local part of it? So that like two different brandings where like we have to really separate that out. So these are all these kind of small technical challenges where we would not have thought about if we are going along. But like, these are the things that came in for us to really take that initiative to say, come to that, like have a discussion. And one thing we were sure was like, we always found a way, like there has been moments where like in any project, like where you say that like, okay, what is happening? There is no solution. But one thing was sure that like we were consistent in one thing that like we always put in to say, we have to make this work.
As I said, as a citizen of somebody who lives in a very small municipality in a county, I have no idea which service comes from where. And I think, that's also a big opportunity that you have to combine those things together. Did that enter into your mind? Becky, how did you feel about that?
Being able to provide something to our residents that they're not going to have to know whether it's SCUGOG or the region that's responsible for it, and they're going to be able to track all those service requests, SCUGOG and region service requests in one place, is a huge win. And I think that's really what sold us on this project, was the ability that from a resident standpoint, it's going to be so simple and easy for them to understand and see all their various service requests in one place.
And of course, working together, you can get more from your more bang from your buck in terms of budget, and be able to get things that you might not be able to otherwise accomplish. Isn't that another good benefit of this project?
That is a huge benefit for us. Being so small and such limited resources, we weren't going to be able to accomplish and do as much as we're going to be able to do. Essentially, by us being a part of the region's project, we're benefiting from all the enhancements they're making. So it's a long-term partnership and relationship in regards to the CRM. And I think we're going to see more opportunities for us to work together in years to come on various other projects.
And we've joked about it, but what would be your advice for people who are thinking about ways they can partner like this? Callian?
I think first thing that I would say is it is not a regions project or a SCUGOG's project. It's just about we are enhancing the customer service of our residents. And the second part of it is there is no a bigger partner or a smaller partner. Everybody is equal onto it, and have that eye on the prize. And there will be roadblocks in that. But I think with so many smart minds, I am very, very confident that if you really believe in it from your heart, you will definitely be able to find some solution. And there are some compromises that you have to make, and be ready for that, and don't give up on it. And the residents will appreciate it. And this is what the model can become, where we are all partnering with each other. It is not about different forms of government, but it is all about trying to serve that resident in the best possible way.
And as somebody who's been on the side of negotiating tables in IT discussions, I think there's an amazing thing. You two seem to have a lot of respect for each other. And how did that come about? Becky?
Honestly, I think it started prior to where I am today, where at my previous municipality, we needed some IT support, and I called up the region, and that's when the relationship partnership started. And just the trust. I know I can call KC if I have a question or concern, and he's going to take it seriously, and vice versa. And we work together. And I think it's just taken time to grow and develop. But from the get-go, that trust and respect has been there from the day I met KC. And that's one of the most important things. And not only KC, but his entire team at the Region of Durham. They're always a phone call away. And I think that's been what's been so amazing to see.
And Callian, Becky's comment is you and your team. How did you build that trust and respect in the partnership?
It's about the change in the culture and our mindset, to say that where we are not two different entities, although from a legal perspective, from a provincial perspective, everything, we are two separate entities. But at the end of the day, we are serving the same residents. So we are here to help each other out. And this is not just with SCUGOG. That's why I love the a broader Durham region part of it. From an IT, I want to call out the other people who are not there in this call, where whether it is Whitby, Ajax, Oshawa, everybody, right? Where we all of us IT managers, we all IT leaders, we meet every Friday and we talk about what are the challenges that we are going in, because we are more similar than dissimilar.
This has been a fabulous discussion. I love to tell stories like this, and I'll remind all the viewers, if they hear of projects like this, send them to me. You can reach me on LinkedIn, email, or via the comments in any article on itworldcanada.com. And I want to thank my guest, Becky Jamieson.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you to Callian Chakravarthy, CIO Durham Region. Thank you, Callian.
Thank you, Jim.
And back to you, Fawn.
Thank you. And now, it's my pleasure to present the City Building Panel, critical to all prosperous cities. As you can appreciate, the change on consumer behavior since COVID-19 has significantly impacted communities and neighborhoods. For this reason, the City of Toronto formed the Recovery and Prosperity Alliance a few years ago to help with city building efforts. Some focused areas include equity and inclusion, democratic processes, and business revitalization. For the downtown core, the changing retail and service habits, dependence on the automobile, increased dependence on remote work, alongside better connectivity, and the rising cost of land in downtown cores feed into the argument that there are fewer reasons to live and work in the city center regions. As in all areas, there are specific needs for downtown revitalization efforts to ensure a healthy center. Cities are undergoing significant digital transformations to stay competitive and attract the businesses and citizens required to keep a city vibrant and competitive in the short, medium, and long term. This session will examine what is necessary to support innovation and investment. Moderated by MISA Canada's President, Connie McCutcheon, our esteemed panelists are Grant Coffey, Interim Director, Strategy and Communications, Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, and Alice Yu, Director, Digital City, Connect-TO, City of Toronto.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Let's dig right into our city building discussion. Grant, we'll start with you for the first question. How should cities cooperate to achieve ambitious goals and promote interoperability with citizens as their focus?
Thanks, Connie. Yeah, this is a really big issue for cities in general. When I look at the types of things that we need to work together on, it's about understanding that we have some common challenges and opportunities as cities. Often the challenges themselves, I think, are difficult and often a little bit overwhelming to look at in isolation. And when we actually go out there and have those conversations and start to look for partners, whether they're other cities or other partners to help us with how we might approach some of those situations, I think that's really important.
Alice, do you have the same challenges?
Absolutely. When cities get together, it's true, we find so much in common. And it can be a really good form of therapy, just to understand that your other counterparts are struggling and are making progress on similar things. I'm really excited about continuing those relationships that we've built, especially during the pandemic, and continue to not only share our successes, which I think are super important, sharing successful stories. They could be big or small, but also sharing places where we haven't succeeded. Sharing those failures, if you will, also allows the other partners in the other cities understand, what didn't go well and what can they do differently. I think those things really can allow us to have that honest dialogue. And at the end of the day, it is the resident or a citizen that's going to benefit from a better public service.
Oh, I agree completely. I think, being authentic and sharing those lessons learned, right? That really is how we can cooperate and learn from each other. Here's another one, Alice. It's up your alley. Do you see yourself as representing digital government? And what challenges do cities face as they become digital? And you had mentioned the pandemic. It really forced us along this. So curious to hear your thoughts on this.
In Toronto, it's something called the Digital Infrastructure Strategic Framework. And so that is how we want to use as guidance as the city builds, buys, and uses technology. And that's something that includes things that we may do ourselves or that's happening in our public realm, right? So that our residents and businesses are interacting with. So absolutely, I think people are looking for the city, and I'll be frank, sometimes residents don't make that differentiation between the city or the province or the federal government. What they are looking for is that their voices and their interests are met.
I think you're right. Citizens just view us all as government. They don't think about jurisdictions at all. I'm interested to hear your take on this one, Grant. What challenges do cities face as they become digital?
So it's quite a complicated picture that's evolving. And I think that's one of the main challenges that cities and just in general we face is the evolving nature of the realm. The opportunities they seem like they can be endless, but the reality is they have to be grounded in actual outcomes. And so I think cities are working on, they're at different levels of maturity with regards to having those foundational elements in place, the framework that Alice talks to is a very significant step forward for Toronto in the context of working with its citizens, working with its businesses, working on a global setting with partners as well, so that there's an opportunity for us to be talking in some context and working together in a way that we can exchange information and ideas and opportunities in a framework. It doesn't mean all the issues are resolved or solved. What it means is we have a way to talk about it.
So, Grant, you talk about evolution and frameworks. I'm wondering, how are we keeping up with innovation and investment moving forward to ensure we have vibrant cities?
I think within the sort of the Canadian context, we have to understand that we're not everywhere is the same. So we're often comparing ourselves, benchmarking ourselves, looking at other jurisdictions to understand how we can improve, which we absolutely need to keep doing. But we also need to understand where we're unique and where we have opportunities to sort of leverage our unique position, whether it's in a certain sector or with our citizens, with our businesses, regionally, locally.
Very great points, Grant. I'm curious, Alice, what are your thoughts on the investment and innovation and how we achieve vibrant cities moving forward?
Innovation is going to happen in the ecosystem overall. The city is not looking to be, that proverbial red tape to wrap around innovation and make sure we're pulling it back. What we're trying to do is create an environment where it's that clarity, right? This is what the city is looking for. Here are our 6 principles. Here's what we expect out of equity and inclusion. Here's what we're expecting from economy, society, and environment. And that way, the innovation that happens isn't then thought about in the public realm and maybe pulled back by public discourse. And one example I'd like to give is around just these sidewalk robots that were on city streets here in Toronto. And it's a great innovation that many cities are trying. But what the innovation didn't have is the proper public discourse around what does that mean for accessibility? What does it mean for wheelchair users? And so we believe that having this framework, having a good way to think about it, like Grant mentioned, allows us to solve those issues ahead of time so that innovation can actually prosper.
Oh, that's so true. And you know what? Cities are about us, the people that live in them, right? Technology is just that enabler. I'm curious, Grant, what's your take on this about the investments?
So just to give a bit of context, where I'm situated now, it's with the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. So this is the social housing provider in Toronto with a focus on seniors only, meaning our tenants are low income and they're 59 years and up. And we have about just under 15,000 tenants in 83 buildings. And, one of the things that and many of them have vulnerabilities and face different challenges as they age. And our goal is to help them to age in place in comfort and in dignity. And, one of the things that we experienced during the pandemic, which I think all of us at some level, is the interdependence or dependence on technology became even more prevalent. But when we explained that we needed to have the opportunity for our tenants in whatever way we could to be connected with their families, connected with their friends, connected with their medical support, and their teams digitally. And we were able to get that. And that allowed us to open up and bring in partners to help. And we did during the pandemic to help teach people how to use devices, help people get access to devices. So this is really the tip of the iceberg, though, as to what's really required. But it really demonstrated for us the importance of working with partners.
So, Alice, I'm going to reframe the question a bit. And I'm sure you've got more to share. What resilient infrastructure and resources are needed to meet current and future consumption?
From a digital perspective, we've learned a lot over the past few years as we come out of the pandemic. And what we've learned is that there is indeed a digital divide in Toronto. Grant's talked to you about some of the people who are living in the seniors buildings and some of them experiencing vulnerabilities in different ways. And so when you look at the actual infrastructure in the city, we are one of the best connected cities in Canada for sure. And so it begs the question, what is driving this digital divide. And so, of course, we're looking into that, and we've done a lot of research. And when it comes down to it, income and poverty is a big factor in driving that digital divide. When we think about digital infrastructure, we're thinking about all those different things, both the resiliency in the actual, in what's in that tube, in underground and going to our buildings. And so from that perspective, we're looking at when we are building new buildings in the city, when we are in charge of revitalizing buildings and neighborhoods, how can we embed digital infrastructure in at the front end rather than an afterthought, right? So rather than thinking after you've built a park, oh, should we have free public Wi-Fi here, think about what the community is looking for. How can we make that really a space that where people can just be and be comfortable and use the city space to enjoy that quality of life we've been talking about.
So moving forward, I'm going to shift gears a bit here. The next question we have is, what tech-driven city building initiatives are you working on for connected cities? Grant, you want to go on this one?
Yeah, so I'll give this a shot, Connie. A big issue, for example, in our community right now, and this is not unique to seniors or Toronto seniors, but just broadly, is the diversity of our tenants. So when you look at the diversity, almost half of our tenants don't speak English as a first language. And this becomes a huge challenge when we're trying to work with our tenants and communicate to ensure that they understand and feel comfortable as to what's happening. And then broadly looking at accessibility, because this is another sort of aspect as people age, sometimes their accessibility requirements will become more significant, and some of those accessibility requirements are known, and some of them are seen, and some of them aren't seen. But it's just sort of being responsive to that. So, these are areas I think from a technology perspective, there's an opportunity that we may be able to help, spawn or foster some discussions with others, and beyond just Toronto seniors. And I think there's an audience and an opportunity that may help with city building in other ways.
Oh, that's awesome. I imagine, Alice, you have similar challenges with languages and accessibility. But what other tech-driven city building initiatives are you working on for the connected city?
So from a society perspective, you may have heard about City of Toronto launching a 311 app. So this is something that's really transformed the way we run our business and intake information. But we also see it not only as a tool to get information from residents, or if you're like me, trying to figure out is it a recycling day or is it a garbage day, to which bins to take out. But it also allows that connection. And I really think that it also goes further to build that trust and confidence in city services when you have something that tells you the information you need to know in a way that you're used to. From the environment perspective, I want to mention, we have done a lot in terms of Transform TO, trying to lower the city's greenhouse gas emissions. And one great example I love is using wastewater energy for heating buildings right here in the city. So one example that's been a great success is the Toronto Western Hospital. The University of Toronto is now looking at more of these projects. And it just goes to show you that innovation doesn't mean doing a whole new thing somewhere. It means let's see how we can do things differently in our own footprint right now. And the last one I want to mention is more on the economy side, which is the Transportation Innovation Zone right here in Toronto. So it's on the Exhibition Place. And so it's a way for incoming technology to test some things out in a real life environment, with 4 different seasons. So it's quite a powerful tool to build the economy right here in Toronto, so that we can actually test innovations on our grounds, literally in our grounds.
Oh, these are great examples, great stories we can take with us and share. Thank you. There's excellent stories. I'm going to shift the focus even more on our citizens with the next question. How are you adopting a mindset that prioritizes citizen customers as the common good? Grant, we'll go to you first.
Understanding what's actually going on in the broader sort of context of our communities, and not looking at the city of Toronto or the city of anywhere as necessarily a uniform place. There are communities, there are individual aspects, there are different needs and issues and opportunities in different places across the city. So it's about engaging citizens in an effective way. When I look at what we're doing in Toronto seniors, we're actually fairly new, but we're trying to bring our tenants into different initiatives. So right now, for example, we have started, we call them quality improvement initiatives, and we're working on how we can improve pest management, which is a key issue that our tenants have been mentioning. And we're working on a second one around safety and security, which is another key issue, and a third on staff and tenant relations. So we've set up joint teams between staff and tenants, something that maybe hasn't necessarily been done in the context of delivering the types of things and working on the initiatives together that we're working on. So we're actually going through that right now, working through a process to bring together really the key stakeholders in all of this, the people that actually receive the services and the people that help to deliver the services, but working as a team. So that's one aspect. Another thing we're going to be doing is actually developing what we call a tenant engagement model, or a model for how we're going to engage our tenants, or more broadly, you could look at it in a citizen context as well.
Excellent. You know what? I'm going to wrap up the panel with one final question for both of you. What are your plans to stay competitive? Alice, I'd love to hear from you.
We think we can stay competitive by just being very open about what we're about, right? We have now a council adopted digital infrastructure strategic framework. We have a process in which the public can continue to give us input on what kind of digital city they want to see us build. And that's what we think is going to set us apart, because there will be no question marks around what Toronto is about from a digital perspective. And that's really going to attract, I think, people, because I think what we got is pretty great, as well as making clear, where we're going, the path that's going forward.
Awesome. You know what? Toronto's always number one for me. So that's a great, summary of how you're going to stay competitive. Grant, same question. How do you plan to stay competitive?
One of the things that we're working on now, and this is something that the city more broadly has already been working on for many years now, but in our new sort of world in Toronto seniors, it's establishing a focus on how we're going to measure success, and really being clear about how we're going to measure outcomes, and then actually measuring them, and then understanding how that, what they're telling us, and whether it's making a difference in the broader impact. And that impact could be something that we don't control, but it could be something that actually is an impact and an improvement for the city as a whole. So, for example, on our service model, we're looking at how we can actually deal with people aging in place comfortably and in dignity. But, there are impacts on other aspects of the healthcare sector, for example, or you look at ambulance calls, and you look at police calls and whatnot. There are other things that we can do in our buildings or with our tenants, programs that we can do and supports we can bring that will help our tenants age in place more successfully and actually work better or support the other aspects of the system within which we all live.
Yeah, what a great outcome, right? This is, fantastic to hear. And may I say, this was a great discussion, a great city building discussion. Thank you both so much.
Thanks, Connie, and thank you to the panelists. For our final presentation, please welcome back Jim Love, CIO, ITWC, and Jed Carthorne, Principal Evangelist at Shiny Docs.
My guest today is Jed Carthorne, Principal Evangelist for Shiny Docs. Now, this is a relatively new role at Shiny Docs. Jed, let's do a quick introduction to Shiny Docs and what you do there.
Hi, Jim. Thank you. Yes, I am new in a new role. So Shiny Docs is an information management, information governance specialist. My role as an evangelist is to get out there and expound the benefits, not just of my company, but of the industry as a whole. Information management, data management, information governance. But it's also to listen to everyone who's part of that industry, both other vendors and, more importantly, customers and users of information management technology.
So it's great way to put it. Listening is part of evangelism in there. So tell me what you've learned from listening.
Well, recently I've spent the last week in Ottawa listening to federal government customers. We also have some at the provincial and the municipal city level. And I have seen that whilst everyone is different and, every level of government has its own issues to contend with, there are also some common themes.
Common themes? Like what?
Yes, common themes such as, dealing with freedom of information requests, understanding the depth and breadth of the information they're sat on, and also providing timely access to that information to both their employees and to their citizens.
Okay. And so what's the big issue what in all of that?
Obviously, there's many issues, but the big theme I think that arises from this is how do you figure out if you're about to start, whether it's a tactical improvement project or a giant, digital transformation project, is to understand what you're sat on already. How much information do you have, where it is, who has access to it, and just, how much stuff do you really have?
Okay. So I've heard that too when projects are starting out. I'm going to tell you, I'm just a little bit skeptical. First of all, it's the right thing to do. We all get that. But the reality is it's easy to say and it's hard to do. And I think for two reasons. I'm not dumping on people about this. We've all been victims of what I call the placemat strategy, which is you have your current state, you have your future state, and then the stuff that happens in the middle is how you get there. Reality, we just want to get there. And even if we're bought in, and I think it's a good thing to do. Don't get me wrong. I'm the first one to say, if you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going to, and you won't know you got there. But when people are resource challenged, when they're trying like mad just to keep their head above water, I sort of got to forgive them when we come in and say, we'd like you to tell us where you are and where all things are. They just want to solve a problem. Do you get that feeling too?
Absolutely. And I think like yourself, I've been a consultant in the past and I completely understand what you're saying because I've, handed that over to the client and they're like, really? How do you help me get something done? And I think I've been using a quote which is rightly or wrongly attributed to Peter Drucker, the management guru. If you can't measure something, you can't manage it. And I've added find it. So if you can't find it first, you can't measure it, you can't manage it, where managing is taking action and doing something with it. Yeah. And I think if we don't, get to that good understanding of the current state, it sometimes, depending on what you want to do, is very difficult to make those improvements.
Yeah. I think that's fair. But how do we get there? There's a lot. People have tons of information out there. That's the problem. I mean, it's all over the place. We don't know where it is. How do we get to that state where we know what we have and where it is?
And that's very true. And that is part of the problem for many of our customers and many people that we see who comment upon industry reports. There is so much stuff in so many places, and the legacy repositories or your more modern systems as people move to M365. So what you really need is some technology that can cross all those boundaries, that it's easy to set up and configure and will help you understand what you have and where it is. And, draw you some nice graphs and a nice dashboard to help you visually gain a quick understanding of where everything is.
So you're saying technically it's not as, using some of the technical stuff that's out there now, it's not as hard to gather it all up as I might have thought or as it once was.
You know what? That technology keeps moving on, Jim. It's not as bad as it used to be.
Yep, they're going to put a man on the moon next. Not that fake thing they did in '69. No, just kidding. Okay, so I'm sold on doing the right thing, and you've convinced me that I should at least look at the fact that technology is advanced and you can pull this stuff together. You can get it together fairly easy. So what's the next step?
I think it depends on whether our listeners have or viewers have a project in mind, or if they are being driven by regulatory pressures, whether it's freedom of information, whether there is something they want to do at the city level. So it is contextual and depends what the driving need is. But for instance, we've found talking to both provincial and municipal level that people span up a whole bunch of team sites, for instance, to help with COVID working from home. And now they need to turn that from a quick response to a business need to understanding the long-term impact of that. And what are their users putting into those team sites? And how much of it? And should some of it perhaps not be there for various reasons? So people are starting to look at the long-term sustainability. And so that's where technology can help them with their understanding.
Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity. And in fairness, just so we're not criticizing anybody, a lot of people did miracles to get the remote work working and set up all kinds of individual things. And I think inadvertently, we may have even created more islands or more silos in the process of silos of information. So bringing all that together, that's a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah, and I think, the technology gave us the ability to rapidly respond to an emergent situation, and it was fantastic. Whether it was Zoom calls for keeping people face to face, whether it's an organization's ability to quickly spin up a team site. But what you've got to remember is beneath that team site are hidden SharePoint libraries with lots of documents in them now, every time someone's uploaded something to a discussion. So if you add that to your pre-existing repositories, things have started to balloon again. And with the right technology, you can look across all your repositories and get an overall understanding.
Yeah, a friend of mine who was a CIO of a city said, cities are natural silos. I mean, there's all kinds of different departments. And I think they're complex. They're big, complex organizations now. Another friend of mine also told me that no matter what happens, when we're dealing with a corporation or a government, it doesn't matter. We want to think of that organization the same way we think about a person. So if it can't remember who we are, or if it doesn't know about us, or if it seems scattered because it's got information all over the place, we resent it in there. So we feel that the organization's uncaring. And even though we know differently, we can't help but feel that. So this presents us with a real opportunity, doesn't it, to bring that information together?
Absolutely. So, any great problem should present us with great opportunities too. And so whether you're setting up that single information number for your citizens to call to find the services that they require from the city, or whether you're a information governance head in a provincial level agency dealing with freedom of information requests, the same technologies can help you. They can help your employees get access to the information they need to answer a citizen's questions. They can put that information at their fingertips, or they can help your records manager or your information governance professional to find the right documents to respond to a freedom of information request. The bottom line is every city, every agency is going to have something slightly different that they want to do. But the commonality is with good search capabilities, we can help the right people find the right information at the right time.
Okay, Jed, I started out skeptical, but you convinced me. So bring this information together, get it into one place, allow people to be able to search it and be able to find things so that anybody can get in touch with the information they need and break down the silos. Did I get it right?
Absolutely. Well done, sir.
I can learn too. So now that you're in this job, so you're out there listening and sharing with people in there. What's your next challenge?
Hopefully, some of the viewers, listeners would like to hit us up, and I'd like to listen to them too, because everyone has a slightly different story, and it's always great to get that nuance. So whether they want to give me a call personally, or get in touch via email, or just drop by the Shiny Docs website and get in contact with us from there, we'd love to hear from them, because we'd love to hear what their problems are and see if we can help.
Thank you very much. So thanks to my guest, Jed Cawthorn, Principal Evangelist for Shiny Docs, who taught me about bringing information together and evangelism as listening. Great chatting with you, Jed.
Thank you very much, Jim.
And now I'm going to turn it back to Fawn Annan.
Thank you very much for your attention, and to all of our fantastic panelists, again, representing the Toronto, Mississauga, Barrie, Brampton, Hamilton, Innisfil, Newmarket, Ajax, Scugog, and Durham region. A special thanks to the City of Toronto for its continued support of the Technicity program. Thank you again to our sponsors, Google, Ricoh, Epson, Shiny Docs, and VMware. Special thanks for the continued close collaboration with MISA Canada, the CIO Association of Canada, the Digital Governance Council, KIPS, and Mackenzie Institute. Thank you to our speakers and you, the audience. And thanks to the ITWC staff who make all these events possible. Look for editorial stories from this event in the various ITWC publications, or you can come back to this platform tomorrow and you'll be able to see the articles and rewatch the videos you want on demand. If you enjoyed today's conversation, especially where the discussion touched on cybersecurity, I invite you to attend ITWC's next conference, a MapleSec Satellite Summit, slated for February 28th. That's just in a few days. You can register on the platform or at maplesec.ca. I also urge you to keep your eyes open for Technicity West, slated for the fall of 2023. It'll be interesting to see how the world has changed by then and how municipalities in Western Canada have responded. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for joining us, and stay safe.